Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Frank Zacarri, and this is Life Altering Events. And I'm going to start this show with a very shameless self-promotion. I've written my 6th book, and it's just entering the publishing process. The book is called The Secret to Walking on Water is to Know Where the Rocks Are. Now, this is a guide for anyone who is an entrepreneur or anyone who's leading any kind of an organization. As you're going to see many times throughout this guide, success is not working harder and it's not working smarter. It's not what you know that's going to make you successful or fail. It's what you don't know. What you know is not nearly as important as who you know. So many organizations sink because they don't know where the rocks are. And this guide will help prepare you for what it is you don't know. So enough of the shameless self-promotion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how many times throughout my career I have heard the statement, keep your emotions out of the workplace. Now, let's face it, folks, that's not going to happen. My good friend Kimberly Davis wrote in her book, Brave Leaders, that brave leaders recognize that they must deal with what's real. And what's real in today's workplace is a bevy of emotions that, if ignored, will destroy your results. And she continued, while it's messy and inconvenient, human beings can't truly leave our emotions at the door. And smart leaders know how to recognize, honor, and diffuse, if necessary, these heightened emotions. So how do we address emotions in the workplace? Does knowing how to properly change or control emotions give us a competitive advantage or a happier life? I really don't know. But today we have an expert in this area, Sara Westbrook. Let me tell you a little bit about Sara. She's a professional speaker. She's an author. She's a singer. She's a creator of presentations and workshops for both adults and children aimed at strengthening relationships. And she's an expert in resilience and emotional well-being. Now, this is impressive, ladies and gentlemen. Over 500,000 people. 500,000 people have been inspired by Sara's enthusiasm, her positivity, her humor, and the transformational power of her message. She's appeared on many media outlets, including Global, CTV, and Sirius XM. She's an author of the You Power Journal 2.0, which is an interactive journal for kids designed to help them tap into their talents, build resilience, and discover what makes them uniquely them. Now, when she's not doing all that, she can be found in her kitchen making healthy treats for her husband, George, and their son. And when she's not cooking, then she's at an arena with coffee in her hand, watching her son play hockey. This is an incredibly busy and extremely accomplished young woman. Sara, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Oh, it is my pleasure to be here, Frank. To hear all of those wonderful accolades is it's so funny to hear someone introduce you while you're in the room, right? Like all of that, you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, and then you're like, oh, well, that's me.
Yeah. It is interesting because you said, wow, that's me. That's an impressive person. Now, Sara, you started out as a singer and songwriter, and you were very good at it. So what changed? What inspired you to move into this, becoming an expert on emotions?
Okay, so this is a really interesting story, and I'm going to give you the Coles Note version. Otherwise, I'll take up the whole time with this story.
Okay.
Coles Notes is 3 years old. I told my mom I'm going to be a singer. By the time I was 8, I was taking singing lessons. By the time I was 11, I was a paid performer, singing, loving it. Around the same age, my life as I knew it at home was falling apart. My parents started to argue more. That was when I really noticed that there could be conflict and that communication could really be broken and distorted. Like, I can remember writing about different perceptions in my journal around the age of 11. And that's where I really realized that there was challenges happening within my own home. My parents eventually got separated, then they got divorced. And then I had this lack of relationship with my dad. The same time, being a preteen, there's lots happening at school, emotional,
Yes.
social,
Yes.
and so my mom could see that I was taking all these circumstances and all the emotions that were being triggered from the circumstances, and I was absorbing them like a sponge. And it was really impacting in a negative way my self-esteem, confidence, and my ability to bounce back and move forward. So being the wise mom that she is, she signed me up for every single character development leadership course, Frank, she could get her hands on. It did not matter if she didn't have time nor money, because both of those were not going to be an excuse for her to help build my confidence. And I didn't want to go to one of the things she signed me up for.
Right.
Like 18, you know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child?
Yes.
A firm believer in it. As a preteen, I thought my village needed to be more friends, right? Like more friends and a little bit of stuff, more friends and stuff. That was going to be my village. But my mom knew that my village needed to be mentors, coaches, educators, leaders, people that had wisdom to share and perspectives to share and tools to grow. And so at that age, I am singing, I am going to character development courses. And then around the same time, my teacher thought I'd be really good at public speaking. So I went into public speaking and I literally just did it just to do it. And apparently I really liked speaking. What I didn't like that I had to constantly move through was speaking for me triggered more vulnerability than music. Sharing personal stories, knowing that when you share something, it is not up to you how the other person hears it and takes it, applies it. So that you can surround your words and actions with light and love, and then you put it out there and it's up to the other person what they do with it. That became a really tricky, anxious, nervous part of the process for me. Just really from I wasn't in control of other people's emotional reaction or perception.
Exactly.
But that was good for me to learn and build confidence. Now we fast forward to I'm 19 years old. I'm at a mall. I'm singing. And a principal comes up to me and says, "Can you sing at my school? And then can you let students ask you questions about how you got to do what you got to do?" And here I go. I feel the fear. I put in the courage anyway. I stand up there in front of this school that had a lot of challenging circumstances. A lot of kids came from very challenging circumstances. And as I'm singing and then asking them to ask me questions, they're not asking me as much about singing as they are, what's your home life like? Have you ever been left out? Have you ever been through challenges? And so now I'm pulling out tools from my back pocket that I learned along the way. And then it was a bit later still that I married all of it together. So I married the music mixed with the speaking to communicate and share strategies to build emotional resilience.
Outstanding. What an amazing story. And it started at age 11. That's incredible.
When I look back, I was always interested in mindset and how people you can put 10 people in the same circumstance, and they're all going to have a different reaction to it, a different meaning attached to it. They're all going to have a different way that they choose to either soar from it or get stuck in it. And that always interested me. And when I really started to dissect, I saw emotion as being the root of how people's choices could be so different. That did they use their emotions as a motivator? Did they use their emotions, or did they let their emotions use them? And that's why I came up with the concept of emotions change choices.
That's incredible. Now, Sara, over 500,000 people. This is incredible to me. I have a radio show. I've hit 200,000. You're double that have listened to you and been with you. And they've heard your program, and it's called the 3 E's. Is that correct?
Yes, the 3 E's of emotional development.
Okay, walk us through that. What are the 3 E's?
So, what's really interesting is when I look at the emotions and I break them down to 3 categories. So emotional awareness, emotional management, and emotional resilience. So being emotionally aware is being able to have that emotional intelligence that says, okay, so this is the emotion I'm feeling. Okay. Oh, and actually I can feel it in my neck. I can feel it physically as well, because sometimes we aren't always in tune with the awareness of the fact that emotions also impact our physical and mental well-being.
Right.
Then the management piece is, okay, so I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling sad, but I need to do something with sad and frustrated, as opposed to just having knee-jerk reactions and then just making choices and saying, I don't know, I felt like it. Yeah. And for the parents out there, you probably heard it many times where the child's like, you're like, why did you do that? And they're like, I felt like it.
Yeah.
And it's actually, yeah, you did feel like it at the time, but now you're left with guilt, disappointment, shame, even at times, choice, and you're like, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Exactly.
So the man is huge, is being able to say, okay, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, but I'm still going to make a choice that shows respect for myself, others, and my dreams. And that is a difficult skill, to be feeling a tough emotion, but instead of just reacting or suppressing it, being able to manage it, move with it, so that you can still show up as your character of respectful, determined, kind. And then the last part is emotional resilience, which is being able to bounce back and move forward, knowing that the challenging circumstance and emotion is a challenge, that's a chapter of your life and not your whole story.
That's ideal. That is really something. One of the things, I love your statement. You said it a couple times today. Emotions change choices. And your workshops and seminars, do you help people understand that? So how you can take your emotions for the positive?
Right. And so this is a concept that actually my mom, Linda, who works for and with me and has for the last 12 plus years, when she put me in all those different character development courses I was talking about before.
Right.
The great thing is she did courses as well. And one of the greatest ways we teach people is through modeling. And as parents, I think, that saying, don't worry your kid's not listening to you, worry they're, so we built a strong bond with being able to bounce ideas off of each other over the years. And one of the ideas that we often bounced off each other was this whole idea of circumstances happen and they're not always in our control. Other people's actions, reactions. I mean, even what's happening in the world right now, there's so much going on, and we can't just snap our fingers and make it all go away. Don't we wish sometimes?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But what we do have control over is who we become, how we choose to act, how we choose to react, and what we choose to believe about ourselves, others, our body, our dreams, and the world. And so my strategies really became, how do we dissect circumstances, choices, and if we have control of our choices, why aren't people just always making choices that show respect? Because if you ask someone what character traits matter to them, one of the number ones that I've heard from people, no matter what age, is being respectful. A lot of people want to be seen as kind. They want to be around kind people, determined people, people with integrity, responsible. Like, I mean, the list of character traits just flows. And so then my question is, okay, so then why aren't we just all making choices that show respect, responsible, integrity, kindness? Emotions. Because
Exactly.
yeah. Because the emotion can be so big and overwhelming, can often cloud your character, and they're so easy to react from.
Right.
So I build strategies around, so how do we start the practice of saying circumstances are going to happen? They are not always in your control. They are going to trigger huge, overwhelming, sometimes awkward, uncomfortable, painful emotions. Us human beings don't like that. We don't buy uncomfortable mattresses for
That's
a
right.
reason.
That's right.
Emotions are not always comfortable to lay in, to sit in, to look at. But if we could practice reframing how we saw emotions, and then ultimately the practice of how we managed and moved through and with emotions, instead of fighting them, we start practicing how to feel them and leaning into that discomfort. That's where the real rich learning is. And that's what I hone in on, is how can we have a bit of fun with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, Frank, what emotion are you feeling?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So like we can have some fun with emotions because we're emotional beings.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, I just read an article you wrote like 2 minutes before you came on, and it was, "Does common sense exist?" And you had a statement in there that just like one of those wow moments. You said, "When your expectations aren't communicated, others won't know what you want." I see that all the time. I was a corporate CEO for years. You can't read someone's mind, correct? Is
Mm-hmm.
that part of what you help people with?
Absolutely. So here's the thing with common sense. Here's my opinion. So common sense, why I said doesn't really exist, because what's common to one person isn't common to the other. We were raised in different homes, watched different movies. I mean, even going back to my parents' divorce, and my dad lacked the picking up the phone and giving me a phone call.
Right.
And in my mind, it's common sense to stay in touch, pick up the phone. But in his mind, he was like, well, why would I do that? If you want to talk, just call me. Right. So what I got thinking was, okay, so what's common to me is not common to him, and it's causing pain. And why is
Right.
it pain? Well, it's causing pain because my expectation is that you should pick up the phone and call twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have that expectation.
Right.
It's not triggering an emotional reaction for him. And we can just even keep this to business. So if my expectation is my employees check in with me at the end of each day, but I haven't communicated that, but I just think they should know, because they should just check in or tell me what they've done each day that's shown productivity or showing me where they're at, but that's not been communicated. And then I have a few employees that are doing that, so I'm just assuming everyone should do it.
Right.
But a few that aren't doing that. And now, how am I feeling about the few that aren't doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Right.
And now I'm creating a story about, why aren't they doing it when they're clearly doing it? Instead of saying, okay, this is what my expectation is. My expectation is at the end of the day, we do a check-in where you just send me a few bullet points of what you've done, and then I can appreciate. And that's where the shift is. When we communicate expectations, and then we also shift expectations to appreciation, which is, I mean, we could talk the whole time about how big of a shift it is when you change your expectation to appreciation. And we can go use the example of even gift giving.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
you're going to have a totally different reaction to someone's gift if you are in the appreciation mindset as opposed to expectation and what if they didn't get you what you expected.
Exactly.
Right. And this is relationships like husband, wife, spouses, partners, friendships. I mean, any single, relationship, being clear about expectations and being conscious of appreciation. I mean, you're going to have a totally different way of communicating and a totally different emotional response.
Exactly. Now, Sara, I know many CEOs. I was a CEO for 30 plus years. And this is what I hear a lot. They'll say, look, this is all wonderful, but I don't have time for this touchy-feely stuff. All right.
Right.
How do you help them address this? Because if you don't deal, which I learned the hard way, if you don't deal with the touchy-feely stuff, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Well, do you have time for burnout, stress leave, emotional fatigue? We don't always realize that being proactive, even though logically our brain realizes that being proactive is better than being reactive.
Exactly.
But when it comes to taking care of oneself, when it comes to emotional health, when it comes to mental health, we often wait too long. I remember Oprah did a show on drinking water and being healthy. And I remember the expert that she had on was saying, when you're thirsty, your body's already dehydrated. So the whole drinking water is to drink it bits throughout the day before you actually get to the point where you're like, I'm really thirsty.
Right.
So if we took that same analogy and we said, okay, so where else does that apply in life? And it applies very much when it comes to getting ourselves recharged and rejuvenated so that we can do the great work that we're doing. And I think any CEO, any team leader is going to want the best productivity, the company culture that people are excited to be in. And we've probably often heard that a happy employee is a more productive employee.
Correct.
And being proactive with our emotional well-being, our emotional health is the root. I totally believe it is the root, because when you know how to deal with all of this emotional stuff that comes up, whether you like it or not, because we can't say, leave your emotions at the front door.
Exactly.
And then come into the meeting. No, you can leave a knapsack or a briefcase at the front door, but your emotions come right in with you. And it could be things that aren't even about work. It's many times when I work with employees and we talk about circumstances that trigger emotions and what they're hanging on to, it's usually things that aren't even about their workday. So helping them with how do we be aware of the emotion, manage it, and be emotionally resilient is essential to heightening productivity, creating culture that you're really excited about with your company, boosting morale, retaining employees. And I do know that when I talk to employees, they love knowing what the expectation is.
That is critical. And I learned that going up the ladder was unless you let people know, they're going to draw their own conclusions and they're going to make their own decisions.
Right. And you know how many of us really love to have some sort of structure or routine. The flow and flexibility and adaptations all in there, but that we really want to know, okay, what is expected? And then I can have that end result. Because if you don't know what's expected, that can trigger a whole bunch of emotions, whether it's frustration, anxious, because you're like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing next. And, I don't know what the end result is that we're working towards. So that really in leadership, I think it's a combination of, yes, we are praising an end result, a goal, but that we are creating relationships along the way so that you're both. And it's and that's the fine line with being a great leader, is having that courage to dive into relationships, which is very much about connecting and supporting emotionally. Because
Correct.
when people share their emotion and they feel heard and validated, they actually feel seen. They feel like a whole person. Like, oh, they get me. And it's not even about fixing or changing emotions, because I think that a lot of times it's just about listening. Have you ever been, Frank, like really annoyed, but you didn't need someone to fix and change it, but it was kind of nice just for someone to know I feel annoyed?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We had a guest on one time, Sarah, and she talked about deep listening. And I think that's what you're saying here. I see you, I hear you, and you're valued.
Mhm.
Now, COVID has changed everything. Okay. People are afraid. I've never seen fear like this in my life. Afraid for their job, afraid of getting this disease, afraid of their security within their work, their family. Now, are you saying that you're spending more time helping organizations rebuild the trust and the respectful culture again? Has this broken that fabric down, the COVID thing?
I think it's really interesting because as human beings, we're really, really good at adaptation and we're not good at change.
That's great.
So we're like, we're good at adapting, and then we can get in it, and we dive in, we know it needs to be done, but we don't like change. So we're really waiting at some point for, like, is it going back to the other thing? Because, like, I'm adapting, but I don't know that I like this.
Right.
And that is a big part of the companies that have been proactive have really looked at that. Is, okay, so what is this circumstance triggering? And although my employees are adapting, are we checking in and making sure that they're rejuvenating their batteries? Again, remembering that proactivity is the key. We don't want to wait and then now their stress leave or the productivity is going down and now you're noticing there's a problem. Really trying to be proactive. And we do this a lot. Like, for example, if I've got my cell phone and I'm at a 40% charge right now, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, okay, I'm at 40%. This is going to go down. Charger. So I'm asking you, did you bring your charger? And then looking around, and as I'm looking around, time's passing, I'm at 30%. Now I'm looking at videos and it's draining my battery more. Like, I'm at 10%. Like, I'm panicked because I have a call and I don't know if 10% is. Yet we will drain our personal battery and we'll be at like 1% saying, oh yeah, I still got more to give. Put some more on my plate. Here we go. So
Exactly.
what I'm saying, let's not let's take the same concern we have with our cell phone charge and let's adapt it over here. Let's transition that over here to our own charge and say, what do I need to do for me? And this isn't about, okay, so self-care. The first thing we really think of is, okay, I've got to have a spa day, right? Like, I've got to get the massages going. I've got to get more walks going. I've got to do, and all those are great.
Correct.
I want to talk about why we even do any of those items is to rejuvenate our battery. So self-care is really looking at, where are you at emotionally? When you set up a healthy boundary, are you following through with it? Or are you absorbing someone else's reaction to your healthy boundary? And now you're taking on that emotion. Now you're shifting your healthy boundary. Now you're getting more depleted and you're not even aware of it because you're just running slower on empty. And your healthy boundary could be anything from being okay with respectfully saying no to something. Could be, I don't take phone calls after 9 p.m. at night unless it's an emergency. And there's people, even family members, that are going to have an emotional reaction to your healthy boundary, but it's not up to you to take on other people's emotional state.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Now, Sarah, what I've been told and read and heard is that whenever people are involved, there's going to be some kind of conflict. And conflict in and of itself is not good or bad, correct? But I've been told negative conflict occurs or rarely occurs from the issue. It results from a negative emotion that was triggered by an action or a word. So how do you get people to walk that fine line so that there can be conflict, but it doesn't have to become negative?
Well, it's interesting just even how you broke it down right in that question, because how I would see it is, let's break down circumstance. So again, we go back to circumstances aren't always in your control.
Correct.
Whatever people say, do, other people's choices in the world, not always in your control. And that circumstance is often what we see as being the problem. Well, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be this way.
Exactly.
If you didn't say that, then I wouldn't have said that to you. As soon as I blame everything on the circumstance, I am giving a lot of control to circumstance, and I'm not keeping any of it.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to shift is say, okay, the circumstance happened that was not in your control. And maybe it was a really crappy circumstance, right? Like maybe it was a painful circumstance, and if you could snap your fingers, you would just make it disappear. And we all have a story, and we all have a circumstance like this.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of our circumstances are the same, but they don't need to be, because what we have in common is that circumstances trigger emotions.
Yes.
And if I say right now to everyone who's watching, I say, I have woke up grumpy before. I have felt jealous. I have felt overwhelmed. I have felt extremely sad, anxious, angry, disappointed, confused. You know what those emotions feel like.
Yes.
We don't have to have the same circumstance to have a connection. What connects us is that we have felt emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And those emotions become really, really heightened when there's conflict. When there's a circumstance, especially if we see it as not being in our control, I want to remind people where you have control is how do you choose to act, how you choose to react, who do you choose to become, what do you choose to believe. And emotions can cloud those choices. So I think the practice really becomes, and when you ask people why they did something, they will go back to circumstance. Well, because they said that to me. Well, because that happened to me. I want to ask the question, what emotion were you feeling when you said that or did that? Well, I was angry. Okay, so now we're seeing what the root is. The circumstance triggered an emotion. The emotion you became reactive out of. And then we see a behavior. I believe emotions are a reason for behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
They're not an excuse for. But we have to get deeper into why someone made a choice is not all about circumstance. It's because emotion was triggered in them. And that's where they have the control. That's what I really want to, that's what I'm passionate about, is that you have the power in how you use your emotions. Not in every circumstance, not in every conflict, but what are you going to do with the emotions and who are you going to become? And for me, it's always been character matters. And that's why we love even mission statements. They're often, or visions, they're often about the character of the company, right? The character of employees, of what we stand for. Well, when you are in a circumstance that's triggered anger, upset, frustration, it is harder to make a choice that shows the character, the mission statement of respect for yourself and others, but not impossible.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's what I'm passionate about building.
Sarah, I just read a report, given the current circumstances going on in the world, that the Associated Press wrote this, and it said that 1 in 4 workers have either left their job or are seriously contemplating leaving their job. Now, as we come out of this, when we come out of this, having been a CEO, a major concern for organizations is employee retention and then reboosting employee morale. Now, these 2 areas where you're an expert in, how are you going to guide these people?
And this is, and not to sound repetitive, but it goes right back to, I'm very much into strategic formulas. So really giving people a formula to how they can look at circumstance, look at the emotion the circumstance triggered, how are they going to be aware of the emotion, manage the emotion, and then ultimately, where are you going to make choices from? Because if you go around just making emotional based choices and saying, I did it because I felt like it, I was angry, frustrated, sad, excited, disappointed, that's why I did it, is very different than saying, I felt these big emotions because of this circumstance. However, I know how to be aware, manage, and ultimately make a choice that shows respect for myself, respect for others, respect for my company, my dreams. Your choice is going to look way different. I think you either go through life just making every choice out of emotion, or you say, whoa, I feel a lot of big emotions, but that's not where I'm going to make every choice from.
Exactly.
I'm going to make choices with character. And that takes a lot of strength, and it is a muscle. And it's a muscle, I believe, that's worth building. And the more we focus on the core of our emotions and like why they're even triggered and what we're going to do with them, I believe it helps out in all areas of life. So if we're looking at companies, yes, productivity, boosting morale. Can you imagine being able to have the art of communication and knowing that you're able to express and feel, but in a way that is respectful of yourself and others, learning strategies to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in all areas of life, successful relationships, not even goes back to companies, built on relationships.
Yes.
And you want to be able to read other people. So it's not even about your emotions. You want to be able to talk to someone, and when they're using heated words, look beyond the words and think, okay, what emotion must they be feeling? Because the minute I say to you, Frank, I can tell you are really upset right now.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be like, yeah, I am upset. I'm glad somebody notices. And just in saying it out loud, just in recognizing it, not only do you feel seen and heard, but now I'm building a connection with you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we're having conflict, I'm building a connection because it goes back to we are emotional beings.
Exactly. Yeah, you work with children in schools, and a lot of what you've been saying, circumstances are baggage. We've had baggage that have led us to react to certain ways. How important is what you're doing with children to when you try to get to make them you're uniquely you, as you say?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I work, and absolutely love working with youth and reminding them that their circumstances don't define them. Because a lot of the times we'll find ourselves defining ourselves by the circumstance. And then we can even define ourselves by the emotion. Like, oh, I'm an angry boy. I'm an angry person. I'm a sad, as opposed to, no, you're a person that's experiencing the emotion of anger.
Yes.
And that's huge for all people to get, but to start as young as possible.
Yes.
Saying just because you feel an emotion does not make you bad, does not make you wrong. You have permission to feel. It is okay to feel and to feel not okay. But it's, what are you going to do with those emotions? How are you going to use those emotions and move with them? That's really the skill that I am passionate about for all ages. And when you start young, talk about those employees in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
leaders, being
Right.
intelligent, emotionally resilient. It adds to their success in all areas of their life.
That's absolutely true. Now, Sarah, we're just about out of time. With all you've been through, with all you've accomplished, what last thought, what last words do you want the viewers to take away?
It's okay to feel.
It's okay. That's great. I love that.
And you know what, Frank? It's as simple as that, because so many people make themselves feel bad and wrong, or shame or guilt for feeling. Like, like, have you ever caught yourself being like, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't feel this way. I should. I don't find that helpful. And I've done it to myself, especially being a performer, being like, I shouldn't be nervous. I shouldn't be nervous. I shouldn't be. All my brain hears is like nervous, nervous, nervous. It doesn't hear don't be or shouldn't be. And I've practiced feel the emotion as opposed to fight it. Use the emotion instead of letting the emotion use you, because it's natural and okay to feel. It's just what you do with it.
That's perfect. Feel the emotion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, we're just about out of time. Thank you, Sarah, so much for all this inspiration that you've given us this last almost hour. And ladies and gentlemen, what I tell everyone is, no matter what life throws at you, please do three things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. If you have to, you pick up the pieces and you keep moving forward. And as Sarah has told us, better times and better people will come into your life. If you'd like more information about Sarah, you can go to her website, or you can contact me and I'll make sure she gets it. You can see this on ROKU TV and on my YouTube page. And when it goes live, I'll send it to Sarah and she'll put it up on all of her pages also. Now, let me leave you with this last word, ladies and gentlemen. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Sarah has shown us where many of those rocks are. Join me again next week. We discuss another life-altering event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. It was a pleasure.